welcome you to our group podcast for Edtech 535, where we will discuss gamification theories, how they can be used in the classroom, and how the different theories relate to one another. Our group consists of 3 elementary school teachers that teach 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade. Courtney will be talking a little bit about the flow theory. I will be talking about motivation, and Rachel will discuss the situated learning theory and cognitive apprenticeship. So let's start with the introduction of Courtney.
Hi everybody, I'm Courtney. I teach in Boise, Idaho. I teach 1st grade at Andrus Elementary.
And my name is Alyssa Milan. I also teach at Andrus Elementary, and I teach 2nd grade.
And I'm Rachel, and I teach 4th grade at Beaver Acres Elementary in Oregon. And now back to Courtney to start with flow theory.
All right, so first we're going to be talking about flow theory. Flow is a mental state of operation in which a person is fully immersed and focused in what he or she is doing. So it involves full mental involvement and continual engagement in the process of the activity. Flow isn't designed into a game, it's not easily designed into a game, and it is possible that every player, or it isn't possible that every player will reach flow. The idea of flow happens when a player isn't challenged to the brink of anxiety, as well as a player not reaching boredom. In flow, there is a perfect level of challenge, and the player is able to continue on in the game. A flow theory activity will have challenge that requires skill with attainable goal and known rules, clear goals, and immediate feedback. So, in our textbook written by Kopp, it states that flow is extremely hard to reach. When thinking about the idea of flow in my own classroom, I think of my students and their interest in certain games. They always have ways to overcome certain obstacles. Some students use others as support, and others have the ability to push through even when things are a little bit too difficult. It just kind of depends on the student. The idea of flow isn't to have a learner get so frustrated by a game, but enough that they want to persevere through that. I see this often with games that my students choose to play during choice time. If the student gets bored, that's a perfect example how flow is not created in the game to keep students engaged and motivated. So flow can be different between each student. It's always about their own interests, their own game, and the mindset that they have towards learning and the gameplay. Motivation and flow fit nicely together. But before we move on to the idea of motivation in learners, do you guys have any examples of flow in your classrooms, or what games your students are using that you see this type of engagement?
Yeah, great. My students love a game called Kahoot. It's like a review-based game that we play as a whole class, and whenever I even mention the game, there's like an eruption of cheers, and they just never want to stop once we're playing. Repeatedly, I've heard them say like, wow, I can't believe it's already recess. Like, the time just goes so fast. They like enter that total flow state. Another way that I've seen it is I've recently started Genius Hour in my classroom, which is where students kind of develop a passion project to research and learn about and discover. And with that choice, kind of like you were talking about with like your game choice time, students are so engaged in their topic and frequently work on it on their own time, which is like kind of an indicator to me that it's something that they're really motivated to do.
Yeah, I've also recently tried Kahoot in my classroom as a review, and my 2nd graders loved it too. When it comes to the flow theory, I think, like the textbook talks about, it is a difficult thing for students to reach. I'm going to talk a little bit later during motivation about the game Some Dog that my kids have been really into lately. And I kind of see them, in a way, getting into more of that flow with that game because it really keeps them engaged and motivated. But I think, it's a hard thing to achieve. And what comes to my mind is time, really, is I feel like maybe once kids get into that flow, then I feel like I'm saying, okay, it's time to clean up and move on, or we have to be somewhere or whatever. So I think that it's possible to reach in the classroom, but definitely maybe a difficult thing as well.
I agree with that.
All right, so are we ready to move on to motivation?
I believe so.
Alrighty, that will be me. So next we'll be talking about motivation when it comes to gamification. Motivation is a key element when it comes to game and game design. The two biggest factors that go into motivation are the intrinsic and extrinsic rewards and motivators. Our textbook discusses that understanding these two elements and the research discussing the relationship between the two is critical for the concept of gamification. When I think about my own classroom, I think about how I use extrinsic motivators to hopefully get those intrinsic motivators going in my students. The extrinsic motivators include things like earning badges, rewards, or even getting praise from others. And of course, those intrinsic motivators, which educational games want to achieve, is when a player is playing a game and becomes so involved that just the act of carrying out the activity becomes more important than the result of the activity or the outcome. Our textbook also discusses a common motivation theory that's based on John Keller's ARCS model. This model was designed specifically for increasing learner motivation within the classroom setting. And the ARCS acronym is based on the following: attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. And now the model actually includes 5 aspects, as Keller has recently included volition and self-regulation into the model. So I'm just going to go over a quick summary of each. So I feel that attention is gained by building that curiosity and the active engagement is high while the game is providing a challenge for the player. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivators are used to create relevance to the learner, and the learner can make those connections with past experiences and future goals that they may have. Confidence is built up while successful achievement is gained through the learner's own abilities, maybe leveling up through a game could be an example. Continuing motivation occurs because of positive experiences and allowing the learner to maybe apply what they have learned in a game to a new situation. And then learners are motivated by self-regulation, and outside distractions are overcome, and the learner can stay on task with just the game and have that intrinsic motivation. So when it comes to my own classroom, I feel like I provide my second graders with many extrinsic motivators. We do things like class dojo points and earning class tags for their rings, or, occasionally prizes or rewards for good behaviors. I think in gameplay, our class has a class goal when it comes to our math program that we use called Dreambox. And once the students reach a certain point in the game, a certain level, the entire interface changes and upgrades from more of that, second grade primary setting to more of an intermediate setting. And so we kind of, as a class, made a goal for all of us to reach that new interface by the end of the year. And so we kind of announce and celebrate when someone reaches that goal and that milestone, because I do teach second grade, and that new interface kind of starts with third grade level work. And so we kind of celebrate that we've made it there. And I think it kind of provides both intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. And then, like I mentioned earlier, recently my students have really grown an interest in Sumdog. And so far, really, I've noticed more of an intrinsic motivation with that game and my students. While they're completing many different elements of math within the game, they're having so much fun with the activities that go along with math and competing against each other that they want to, spend their own time playing it. So all of these have really gotten my students more interested in math and all of the concepts we practice. So do you guys have any examples of how motivation has played a role in your classrooms?
Sure. I also use some extrinsic motivators like Class Dojo, golden tickets, and then we have a reader board for our math fact fluency. And when students graduate, we kind of celebrate like you do with the dream box. And I feel like these motivators definitely encourage a competitive aspect of motivation, and they're motivated to earn the points or earn more tickets, which then drives them to behave or continue playing the game. Sometimes I have noticed that this like becomes then the point of the activity, and that's when I feel like I need to like change the focus, like to make sure that they're excited about math or learning something and not just what can I do to earn another point. So that's kind of where I feel like I try and find that intrinsic motivation, and that kind of relates back to the flow conversation. Like when they're in the zone and they want to keep playing, that's when like that real learning is happening. And then when they ask to like play at home or in their free time, it's like so much more exciting for me as a teacher than do I earn a point for that?
Yeah, I definitely see it in my classroom as well. We use a online reading program called Myon, and just across the top there is a little rocket ship that goes for how many minutes that they've been reading, and just that alone for them is probably the most motivating thing. I don't hear them talking about, I have to get to the 20 minutes. I mean, that's definitely for some of them a lot of it, but I think just the fact of reading alone is what motivates them. And the fact that it's online is probably a little helpful as well.
Yeah, makes it a little more fun. A final theory we'd like to explore is the idea of cognitive apprenticeship. In a craft apprenticeship, a student works beneath and alongside a master who models and provides an authentic context for developing a skill set. So under the guidance of this master, the apprentice can explore and practice the activities in a safe space. So in a similar fashion, a cognitive apprenticeship is believed to create a scenario where the apprentice learns to solve problems in a realistic context. And cognitive apprenticeship stems from the theory of situated learning. Situated learning can be understood to be learning in that context or within an authentic situation. According to one of the articles we read by Brown, Collins, and DeGuid, this meaningful learning can only take place if it's embedded in the social and physical context within which it will be used. So it suggests that in order to be most effective and lasting, learning should occur in the situation in which the learner will use it. Carl Kapp, the author of our textbook, refers to this as the cognitive apprenticeship. So students are learning on the job, kind of. He also mentions that contextualizing the learning in an authentic context allows the learning to be seen as utilitarian or useful, so it increases the intrinsic motivation. So if students find a way to see the information they're learning as a tool that'll be useful to their lives, valuable, they'll be more likely to be able to make sense of the information they're learning. So kind of like think about it this way outside of the classroom. Like if you're approached by your boss to learn a new computer program, for the sake of the scenario, let's say it's Excel. So you have two options for the training. You can attend a lecture where you are not instructed to even bring a computer with you. You can listen to all the different applications and instructions for how to create spreadsheets and graphs and all the different tools. You're provided with new vocabulary and visual aids, but you never actually try out the program. The second option is an interactive experience where you bring a device and walk through the steps of using Excel to create spreadsheets and create graphs. You've got the opportunity to practice in authentic and real ways. So like which scenario do you think you would develop a stronger mastery and a more lasting skill development? I would argue that it's the latter, the scenario that allows for the hands-on and authentic interactive learning, the one in which you become an apprentice to the tool. So this also occurs in my classroom. With the situated learning theory, one way I see it most often is through our social studies curriculum. My students engage in role-playing simulations that match our social studies units. So like, for example, in our current Native American unit, my students are broken into clans, and we built up a Northwest Coast village. They developed characters and built houses and created art in the style of the Chinook tribes. And then a trader came and settlers came, and we experienced the way Europeans took advantage of trading and stole the Native American land and wrote unfair treaties. And then throughout this entire experience, students have journaled about their experience. And then last week, some students used a green screen to read a journal entry in front of their plank houses, and others created a stop motion video inside their plank houses to reflect what they learned in the simulation. And throughout this whole experience, students came to understand the time period and culture and historical experience at such a deeper level than if we had just read about it in a textbook. So I think situated learning theory has just endless practical classroom applications.